Ah, Professor Anton, what do possibilities actually do? I will get to that in a moment, but I also watched the video that you were replying to because I started to reply without looking at it, and I thought, well, that's not very good. So I watched it. Now that guy, totally, he's he's got. I'm just tired of people that are 100 years out of date. You might think, you're an open-minded guy. You might want to say, Piera's being close-minded. It's a matter of opinion. It's very controversial. It's not controversial when you have science that's 100 years old, been tested by scientific methods, which are logical, philosophical methods as well. All the scientific methods, are valid philosophical methods. They make these arguments. You can't just ignore them. You can't just discount them. You can argue against them, and sure, in the fundamentals of the philosophy of science, you can come up with arguments against just going with it. But to just ignore it, and I speak, of course, of this idea that there's this chain of events that leads from one thing to the next thing, and therefore, and it's an interesting idea, if you believe in God, I suppose, to think, what's God actually do? I mean, he put up the dominoes billions of years ago, and now he's probably just chillaxing by the beach. Fine, how many angels dance on the head of a pin, and so on and so forth? It's fascinating stuff. No, not enough. So just on that, the basic premise of what is important out of an example like that, the material reality, no. Yes, there are things that are random. There's things we call random, and we're still looking. Now, there's a real controversy. Are they really random? But you can't just say, "Well, there's no random things." That's because it's like it's not just a mistake; it's the mistake they made hundreds of years ago, right? They thought they had all the answers. We got this system. Well, we're glad we sure checked out nature because now we figured it out. And we were so wrong. And the new answers were so strange. We can't even say that we know we haven't understood them yet, and we can't even promise ourselves that we will. I mean, the consensus right now is these things are beyond human understanding, really. We just mathematically chart them, and yet that's silly because somebody understands them enough to come up with the mathematical charts. But okay, maybe it's possible that they're incomprehensible in some sense, especially by a particularly human mind. But I like to include minds we might evolve in the future. Maybe we need an extra lobe in our brain to understand it. Maybe it's not understandable no matter what lobes you grow in your brain. Maybe you'd have, whatever. But current physics does say that there's this concept of randomness. And people reject it because, well, I'm not going to accept that if there's no cause for it. No, no. No, that's not the kind of spontaneity we're talking about, right? As you probably know. But anyway, I'm responding to this other guy's video at the moment. And that kind of stuff just sort of, I'm getting tired of it because the argument's right there. How many times do I have to repeat an argument um, uh, so well ignored? You know what I'm saying? It's like, sure, the details and all the subtle issues, and well, maybe this whole interpretation's wrong. All of these things interesting to talk about, but to just flatly state these arguments that that are based on natural philosophy is the thing. But then you're going to ignore when natural philosophy moves on. Doesn't make any sense. I don't like it. Now, what do possibilities actually do is an interesting question, right? Because this is interesting, but this is this is a question that is affected by classical philosophy. In classical Western ways of looking at it, and you're asking, what is a possibility? That's the question you're supposed to. Oh, possibilities? Well, how will I start on my philosophical inquiry? What is a possibility? We're always supposed to ask, what is the thing? You know? When really the thing's a phenomenon, we should be asking, what's the phenomenon? What shape and color? That's what you really ask when you. But then you ignore that for a certain kind of analysis, and yes, what is a possibility? And then you wonder what the is thing that is doing, since things that be also become they do. You know. So you're asking, what is it? What's its static essence that it'll always have? Ontology. right? And then you're going to jump somehow to how's it changing? Why not just start with how's it changing? What's it acting like? Because that's what we're really starting with. Yeah. And if you start with cognitive science and the embodied mind, which again, we don't know what everything that means for the mind to be embodied, but we know some things. We know that it takes time for it to think, to process, to do anything. We know that it takes energy, okay, and so on. We know certain aspects about being a body mean that there's not going to be all of the, that wouldn't even be that. It's like obvious, except for that in philosophy we have all of these promises of the immediate types of information, things you get immediately, and all of this stuff. The embodied mind, you wipe all of that out, and you look at something like possibility. Anything that you're asking, does this thing exist? What is it really? Instead, you are looking in an ordered way. Okay, if you are having trouble finding or knowing what the external or material, I'd rather call it, phenomena is there a material component? You're asking, is possibly it purely mental? So go to the mental, because every idea has a material component mentally. So you can always get a foothold in. And then when you figure out what that mental component is, then maybe you can see whether you think it likely does map and how it maps and start to chart that better. So let's look at a possibility mentally. Possibilities mentally are a pattern. Okay, they're a pattern. And what is the material component of this pattern? It's in the past, right? The pattern was deduced from past experiences. Okay. Forgive me the complications of learning from other people's experiences. One way or another, they came from past experiences. So if the possibility has a material component, it's in the past, and yet it makes a statement about the future. So as we think of it, the possibility, no, is not material, because if we're generally talking about this future event, So does that possibility have an actuality? No, but it has a material actuality as a known pattern, and our expectation that this pattern will, be perpetuated or perpetual, so that we can predict in the future something based on this pattern, and this possibility could happen. You're predicting that it could happen. It's like an immediate prediction, because you're saying right now it could happen, but it isn't happening. Possibility could be complicated. It's like, well, no, it couldn't happen now because of everything going on the earth. I have a glass of juice here. It could be knocked on the floor right now. Except for, you could also say, well, no, it couldn't, because there's not anything with enough force near it right now. My hands are over here. There's nothing with enough force to knock it to the ground at this particular moment. Okay, so the material component of a possibility is not in that visualization of it being at the present moment. Okay, so possibilities don't do anything, just like word processing documents loaded into word processors don't do anything. Okay, the word processor does something. The words there are this encoding, this a product we put into nature. Okay, but it itself does not do anything. Now, for shorthand, we say, oh, yeah, it does. It's a book. People read it and influence its nation. Well, but no, because the light from the sun struck the page of the book that they read in the park, which bounced on their eyes. And that is what changed them. That is what affected them. The encoding, yes, was important. And the energy that went into it, is related to the energy that was gotten from it. But we get energy from our environment, bounce it off the pages to amplify the remnants, of this form that we put down, and to get it in our eyes. So the possibility that book will be an influence on society, no, it is not real, because the possibility is not, that possibility is not going to do anything. People will do something or not, and that possibility will be realized if the pattern is perpetuated. Okay, so what is a possibility materially? It's a pattern that we've abstracted from experiences in the past.